Good morning, Iccha. How are you?
Good morning, Stephen. I'm doing good. Is it super early for you right now?
It's relatively early. My
Yeah.
brain doesn't totally wake up until the afternoon, so a little groggy, but that's okay. This is the best way to start the day. Just to introduce you to our audience, you lead the engineering team at Vanta, which is a compliance product. And before that, you've had a long career working at places like GitHub, and before that at Envision. So you've been leading technical teams for a long time. Um, but I've noticed that you've been writing a lot recently about AI products and how the team is approaching building AI into what Vanta does. So I'm wondering if we could start there and just learn a little bit about some of the functionality that you're shipping and how you're thinking about the development process of getting the most out of AI.
The reason I've been posting a lot more about how we're building AI products at Vanta, and we actually launched an engineering blog series called the Trust Craft series talking about this too, is there's plenty of content out there on how we are changing engineering with AI, but not enough on how to build AI products well. And this is especially important to us as Vanta because trust and quality of our products is very important in the compliance and security space, as you can imagine. So we want to be very thoughtful about how we are building AI products. We have an entire AI org dedicated to focusing on this craft. So a couple of things we are doing, which is interesting. One is, I'm sure if you're really focused on this, you've realized that the cost of maintaining AI features is extremely high. It's because software is never done. New models are always shifting, there's drift in existing models. Also, your customers are changing. If you're a growing team, you're growing new types of customers in your customer base. So things are constantly shifting, and software is no more done. We have internally developed this AI eval or quality framework. Stage one is like, are you actually having traces? Stage two is, do you have golden data sets that you can do eval on? Stage three is, do you actually run evals? Then next is, do you run experiments? And finally, do you take this feedback loop and tie it back into improving your AI product features overall? So kind of develop this maturity matrix internally, done by one of our AI platform engineering managers, and seeing how teams are faring across the board on these things. Maybe the controversial take here is the goal isn't to get to green everywhere, but more to highlight where do we want to get to green and where are we okay with the yellow. So that's one of the things we're doing. There's plenty of other stuff. We've developed internal philosophy and principles on how to build our agent. So a lot of thought is going into how we develop our AI product features.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm reminded of that saying, like, the map is not the territory. So you might have this framework, you might have evals, they might all get to green, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're done, right? That's like a set of inputs and signals around what can be improved, but doesn't necessarily mean, the AI performance exactly matches what your customers want. There's constant iteration there. Just in practice, like, talk me through a little bit what happens when a new model comes out and you're thinking about upgrading your production stack to run a new model. How does the team think through the implications of that shift, how customers will receive the change, what the evals are used for in making that decision around the migration? Because I think that's a challenge a lot of folks face as they're now kind of working with this foundation underneath them, and the foundation is shifting, as you said. So it's this like, how do we do this change management thoughtfully? Would love to hear a little bit about how you approach, say, like a model upgrade as an example.
Yeah, so one is we have offline data sets, which is basically we call our golden data sets that you can run your eval. It's like tests, right? Like you used to call them tests, and back in normal development, this is more non-deterministic versions of tests are what basically evals are. So we run offline evals across like anytime a new model comes to be like, here's what we think, here's the latency, here's the accuracy, the similarity score. We have a bunch of like metrics we evaluated against. And we have this huge table internally we've tested against all the models, like Anthropic's models, OpenAI's models, Gemini. so on and so forth. Each version and anytime a new model comes out, we are adding a row basically there and being like, how does it perform across these different use cases? Something else I'm sure companies are thinking about is like different product features probably need different models. So it's not about like I am using one model across the board. We want to optimize for these set of use cases. This is the specific version and specific model. And newest model is not always better than the older model, which is again counterintuitive to how we have thought about software development. Anytime a new version's out there, it's better, or like so on and so forth. That's not always true for all the models coming out. So once we've run those, benchmark tests, we realize that, okay, this is better. Do we want to move to it or not for these certain use cases? Once that determination is made, then we need to do like our online evals, basically roll this out to a percentage of our customers to evaluate how these are performing and gather more signal over there. At times, we have also done leverage things called shadow mode, which is you continue to run on the old model in production, but also do a comparison against the newer model and compare with which of the two models is performing better in production before making a decision. So these are all different toolkits, and each team kind of gets to pick which of these tools they want to use to make that determination. And then we finally make the switch to the new model if we decide this is the better decision. A great example is the reasoning models came out, and for certain of our use cases, the reasoning models were actually not better. And then we realized that during our online evals, and then we swapped back to the
Yeah.
non-reasoning models.
Yeah, interesting. So new model comes out, you obviously see the public benchmarks. You effectively have your own internal Vanta benchmark that you've developed with offline data sets. If that looks good, you A/B test effectively to
Yes.
verify in production that it is better. It represents an improvement. And then you're constantly iterating. So maybe in that example where like the reasoning models performed worse in prod, my mental model for the evals is they're a leading indicator of real world customer performance, right? And you're trying
Yeah.
to basically have that test suite match production workloads as closely as possible.
Yeah.
So when they drift, and you find these things in prod, how do you think about iterating on the evals and updating them?
We have weekly operational reviews on Teams, which are, you can call them eval reviews, whatever you want to call them. And this is back in the non-AI world. You would do this for on-call handoff to look at your alerts and so on and so forth. It's a similar parallel where instead the team, what they're doing is they are reviewing your production evals, right? So what are the traces which are failing our quality thresholds or various, scores that we have out there. And they're reviewing to come up with a hypothesis of why do we think these certain use cases are not performing well in production, and then take a couple of actions from there. It's like update your data set is one of those. The other actions to develop hypotheses around why this is failing, what should we tweak? Is it in our harness? Is it in our context? Is it something else? And run experiments based on that. And again, there's going to be tons of data points over here. It's what is the most common patterns we see that we want to go respond to, and so on and so forth. Every week, that's the discipline, is because
Yeah,
things are
yeah.
changing, is spending time on it. Something interesting I think Vanta is doing is we are not putting this load only on engineers, but our PMs are very much involved in this too. Our AI team just developed alerts for this where we are tagging PMs to go
Hmm.
look at some of these quality data points because I think it's very important for PMs to understand how much more the load on engineering is increasing
Hmm.
as you are investing in more AI product features. The KTLO and the framing around it is like changing a lot.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, the fact that we have these non-deterministic elements of our production stack now introduce a ton of variance, the harness, the evals, the tests, the response to customer feedback, all these things are in service of constraining that non-determinism to get to the best outcome, but it's a whole bunch of new work, right? And
Yeah.
that's cool to hear that you're making it a cross-functional team sport, not just a engineering duty. I'd love to learn a little bit more about these operational reviews and maybe just a lens into how you think about like running teams at scale. You've got a large number, I don't know the exact number, but a large number of engineers at Vanta. You want to keep tabs on how the teams are performing. It sounds like these operational reviews are one of the ways that you keep close tabs on what's happening. Just tell me a little bit about those and other, key management interfaces that you've designed with the teams to stay hands-on at scale.
Top level, we have our engineering MBR or monthly business review, where I look at top level metrics for the engineering org as whole, and this gets kind of bubbled up all the way up to the board. And then there is more detailed metrics that I look internally. So to talk about the top level metrics, there's basically three categories. One is how are we doing in terms of delivery? So it includes how many product announcements we had, how many ships, what percentage was delivered on time. So kind of those sort of metrics. The second category is quality, which is how many incidents did we have? Did we stay on top of our incident AIs, the number of support tickets, so on and so forth. There's metrics which correlate to these in terms of people, how many ramp engineers we have, so we can kind of normalize as we are growing as an engineering org. Is our percentage of throughput increasing, and is our quality staying steady state and not dropping? And then finally, what is our lead time to production? So that is around developer experience, kind of like proxy metrics around those. There's a bunch of detailed metrics, which are, I call them more like my input metrics, which lead up to these output metrics and help you diagnose if an output metric is not performing well. And also we cut this across like different pillars in my org. So every pillar is going to have a different flavor of these metrics that they need to be held to accountable for more. For example, my platform org is more responsible for the lead time, and they may not have as many public product announcements, and that's okay, but they should be having more engineering ships and engineering announcements versus a product team has a different set of metrics per ramped engineer that they are held accountable for.
Given that you have such a robust metrics framework and operational rigor around these metrics, you seem like the ideal person to talk to about how AI is changing things. So I'm curious what you've seen in those numbers as the team has embraced AI. And maybe just for a little bit of background context, you could tell us where the team is in its journey with incorporating AI into the development process. Is it well adopted across teams? Is it still pockets of the org? How much is the team kind of bought in to AI centric development? And then, yeah, I would love to learn, like, as you've been reviewing these numbers, what you've seen, what kind of dynamics and second order effects have been taking place.
I feel like pretty much everyone uses AI now in the org. We're well over the hump of I'm not going to use AI. I think the
Was there a
team,
hump earlier
yeah.
at points in time? Yeah,
Yeah, there was a hump. I think even after the models got good at the end of last year, there was still like a perception problem on the models. And then, people are like, oh, the models are not great still. Obviously, they're not going to be perfect on a brownfield code base. There has to be a lot more iteration on brownfield code base when it comes to using LLMs, the whole like loops to make them better, still having human in the loop review certain things, especially when you have many patterns in an aged code base.
totally.
So there were points and times where LLMs would lose trust with our engineers because they're like, oh my God, it's not using the most perfect pattern, even though I put the instruction in Claude.md. And so really like navigating the org to be like, okay, don't be one-shotting everything, work through your loops. Can you play around with the instructions? Can you go update the prompts? And then going beyond just using for code, using it for improving our incidents and our quality and other spectrums too. So there's a bit of like a hump around getting people to just play with the tools and don't give up. Keep iterating. We launched a bunch of internal programs like our AI Champions program, where we have reps from each team meet every week, and they're in cohort solving problems related to AI development in our org. So, for example, somebody developed a tool to fix flaky tests in our CI pipeline. And then we're going to roll this out to everybody. So really pushing for more grounds up sharing of what's working, not working. We had an AI wins channel and an AI fails channel. So we're sharing ways
Oh,
in.
smart. I've heard the
Yeah,
AI wins thing a lot, but I haven't heard the AI fails, and that's just as important to learn from.
exactly. And that also helps prevent the perception that we have rose-colored glasses on when it
Hmm.
comes to
Hmm.
AI and we're completely about the clouds, right? Like it doesn't work for some use cases. Like I've spoken to Anthropic engineers and they will tell you these are the things it's really good for and here are the things we are working on, but it's not always published
Sure.
publicly, right? Like the
Yeah,
perception
left
outside is
left to the enterprises to figure out on their own.
exactly, right?
Yes.
People often talk loudly about here are the wins, but not enough about here are the learnings. So yes, there was that hump. Going back to your original point, we really pushed for like people to just play with it, share their learning, share their fails. I also encouraged all managers to start coding more, like every month, at least a couple of PRs. So you are experiencing the pain points and the learnings. And I think we're well over the hump. Now it's more about like optimizing.
Hmm.
Um, I kicked off an AI developer experience team within the org earlier this year too. It's really small, but the most like seasoned engineers in the org who've been around with the code base long enough to understand its quirks to build common tooling within the org. So yes, so lots of grounds up enablement and investment helps versus like just top-down edict. I still wrote a top-down doc saying, this is what we're doing for AI for engineering, but paired with like tons of enablement and support and like investment is what's really helped us like get over that.
That's very helpful background context and awesome to hear some of those tactics that worked to get people on board because I'm sure some folks are still going through that journey themselves. Now that you have pretty universal adoption, would love to learn about how it's influenced those operational metrics and the maybe first order and second order effects that you're seeing. Is velocity up? Are teams shipping more announcements? Are there any quality implications? Just how's it going kind of from your perspective reviewing this data?
Our shipping is up, but I wouldn't say it's proportionally up. Like, so for example, X number of more tokens doesn't mean X number of more ships. Same as X number of more engineers doesn't mean X number of more ships. It's not multiplicative. So that's one thing I think people outside of engineering sometimes have a hard time grokking is always input multiplier is not output. There is like a tax that
Hmm.
when you add more people, there's coordination tax, there's onboarding tax. When you add AI, there's like learning tax. You can immediately jump to like optimizing and have like a multiplier. So that's one thing.
Yeah.
Up, but it isn't like a direct multiplier. It's more like a fractional multiplier. The second thing is, though we like look at where our tokens are going, it's very interesting to look at those numbers because the whole token board, scoreboard hype phase,
Token maxing. Yeah.
token maxing hype phase. I'm glad we didn't buy into that phase because it would just reward the wrong behaviors, which is I'm going to spend money and I'm going to look good. We've always been very practical about like output is output, right? Ultimately, that's what you're held accountable for. If you are using AI for it, great. But don't spend tokens just to show us you're doing the work. Because a lot of times, if you look at where a lot of the token spend is going, it's not always where higher output is happening because people sometimes are figuring out what a good prompt is. Or should I be even leveraging, 20 MCP calls or just uploading a file with some context over here? Some people are really have figured out how to do that, and they're not at the top of Tokenmaxxing, and that is completely fine. The output and throughput is still there. About cost, since that comes up a ton, right now the philosophy is more like being aware of your cost. You're going to start
Hmm.
getting notifications as you reach different thresholds, and then your managers will get notifications once you reach certain thresholds. So you can have conversations around, hey, what are you doing? I'm just curious,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes like this very valid use cases, interesting learnings. And there's a lot of times where it's not worth the ROI. You could have stopped like a couple of days ago. You don't need to continue down the line of
Yeah,
this investment. So starting to build that awareness is where we are at right now.
great. So just playing back some of what I'm hearing, you index the team on outcome
Yes.
metrics. What are you shipping? What's the quality of what you're shipping? That's what has always mattered.
Yes.
Token expenditure is a means to an end to get there. And
Yes.
it sounds like there is some inefficiency in the organization today with how folks are spending, but that is okay from your standpoint because people are learning. So you're spending that money in the spirit of organizational learning and iteration, but now starting to facilitate conversations around cost consciousness with the team.
That is correct. Yes. Fabled out, you know. Don't use
Yeah,
Fable for everything.
yeah. That I think that's a really good approach for the moment that we're in. So appreciate you sharing. What is that use case of high token to high value that you alluded to? I'd love to
Yeah,
learn.
yeah. So one of our engineers developed a code review slash incident bot for all his teammates. He's actually going to write a blog post on it on our TrustCraft series. In what he basically did is he's like, oh, I'm getting too many code reviews today, and we have this generic code review bot. You know, we've tried all the codecs and the Claude and everything, but that doesn't cut it for me. So what he ended up doing is he built his own code review bot. He called it JanBot internally, which learns from his past code reviews and code reviews of engineers he basically looks up to as good code reviewers. And then he kind of put a warm personality to it, uh, to be a more friendly code reviewer, automated code reviewer. And he built that bot, which has like seen astronomical adoption because turns out giving a personality to a code review bot has made it less like mechanical and stoic, and people really are like, okay, Janbot, give me a review on my PR. And so that was like a good spend of his tokens to go develop this. And he's also developed things around like alerts, resolve them before people look at them. And again, there are generic products around this. We use, you know, Pup and other tools too, but personalization of like this is built around how an engineer thinks within this company or within this org has been seeing more success in preventing incidents or having higher response rate to the code review comments versus like ignoring them, has been an interesting use case.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. I mean, we were talking at the beginning of this conversation around developing your own benchmarks and evals for prod, and I think a lot of internal AI development platform teams are realizing
Yeah.
those same techniques apply for internal development effectiveness
Yes.
because off the shelf will get you only so far. I mean,
Yeah.
these models keep getting better and Sweetbench keeps improving and who knows how far they'll get, but
Yeah.
the investment in the harness, the investment in these custom tools, these custom code reviewers, they're where you really get that
Yeah.
gain because it's
Yeah.
catered to your company's code base, your culture.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah, we have a
Um,
Datadog dashboard and we track all the same metrics like you said for internal. It tracks what skills are invoked the most, what are the thumbs up and thumbs down on code review comments, evaling for them. So very true. Like internal efforts require the same kind of discipline. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, totally. Especially with the amount of money that we're starting to pour into these tokens, it becomes a system that you
Yes.
want to optimize and measure just like your production application. You talked about the team kind of going through the learning curve and maybe you're spending a little bit inefficiently so that people can experiment. Where are you hoping to go if you look 3 to 6 months out from now? And what are some of those investments that your team is making that you're excited about?
I'm going to actually take a step back and talk about EPD in general. I think
Hmm.
more and more mind meld is happening between EP and D, that's engineering, product, and design, and how we approach product development. PMs are prototyping within our agent, they are writing prompts. They are like figuring out how do we want our AI products or the Vanta agent to interact with customers. Similarly, I'm thinking about how does engineering evolve and come to the table, right? We want engineers to be thinking about what is the customer needs? How can we get there? What is a long-term investment, medium-term investment, short-term investment? And so very much thinking about how team composition needs to evolve with time so that we are coming to the table as um, co-business owners or partners. You're always going to need like two categories of engineers, like who are very product minded and then who are deeply technical, and they need to be really partnering together with the EPD triad and bringing this to the table. Also, setting like clear expectations that there's always going to be certain long-running efforts like platform investments, code-based investments to make it better for both agents and LLM-driven development as well as for humans. Or like designers are like trying to make PRs, small PRs for like code quality and stuff. So I'm thinking about like as engineering, how do we facilitate our, collaborators and make this more accessible to them while feeling comfortable ourselves and having the right guardrails in place. So I don't think specialization is going to go away. Engineering
Hmm.
has like depth to it. What is a good architecture? What makes certain things good for LLMs? How does it scale with our customers and business needs? That's not going away. There's still going to be that specialization, but there's going to be a lot more of like meeting in the middle. It's already
Hmm.
happening today, but continuing to reduce the friction in how that happens. Going into more engineering specific, this continuing to invest in internal investments in our code base and architecture to really reap the gains of LLMs more. We've been doing that this year. I think there's like more to be done over here. That's
Is
going
that
to
just kind of
be,
common patterns, common ways things are done so that the agent
yeah,
repeats those common ways of doing things?
exactly. Like that's one of them. The second is also our AI DX team really investing in our harness
Hmm.
so that you can accelerate all teams versus everyone figuring out the same problem over and
Yeah.
over again in
Kind
their
of
teams.
golden paths, golden
Exactly.
workflows,
Yeah,
common tooling. Yeah, makes sense.
exactly. And some of this is done, but there's so much more to do as we are
Hmm.
learning more.
One final question, just as you were talking about the evolution of teams and the evolution of roles, you know, a question I'm hearing a lot is, what does this all mean for me as an engineer? What skills should I be honing? What's important now to develop your career? I know you're hiring, you're growing, you're looking for an evolving skill set in how you hire. If maybe a mid-level engineer were to come to you and say like, "Hey, what should I be developing in terms of my craft for this moment in time?" How do you think about the foundational skills that are going to matter for the next couple of years?
There's like three types of teams or shapes of teams. There's the platform teams, there is the app or product teams, and there's like the AI teams. For my like product teams, I'm looking for like T-shaped or E-shaped engineers more. So who are curious about the product and the business and the customers and still have good engineering practices, bring curiosity to the table, bring growth mindset to the table. That's like one category of engineers. The second category of engineers is on my platform teams who are still very much like, I care about the architecture, I care about the technical details, but still with the same curiosity and growth mindset that's going to be common across the board so that they are thinking ahead of evolving our internals ahead of this massive growth we are going to continue to see in terms of what we are building in our product teams. My AI teams are like, they care about how LLMs work and the details of that. They are very curious, very experimental, very 0 to 1. They're on X all the time and, really
Yeah.
applying that to what we are building, thinking ahead. And so those are the three, roughly the categories of teams
Hmm. Hmm.
that we are thinking about internally and hiring different like profiles for them. Curiosity and growth mindset is going to be common across all three of them, and then you tend to specialize a little bit more on what gives you joy as an engineer.
Great. I love thinking about it in terms of those archetypes because different product domains and business domains require different skills, different
Yeah.
focus. So really, really helpful. Each of this has been a really fun conversation. Thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thanks, likewise, Stephen. Thanks for all the thoughtful questions. Great way to spend your Monday morning, huh?
Definitely good
Yeah.
kickoff to the week.